Hello everybody, this is Earthquake here, and today we're going to be talking about Witch Doctor Moze, my dot-focused Bloodletter build. Using the right combination of gear, you can make Moze absolutely magical on the battlefield. Witch Doctor Moze does her best Amara impression by applying multiple elements of dots to everyone all at once, and then slamming right in the middle of them for Groundbreaker to create the biggest Radsplosion you have ever seen. This build uses a mishmash of all the skill trees, and it does some funny things, that is for sure. This is one of the most fun builds I've ever created. I absolutely adore playing this build. I've been running it through True Guardian Takedown for months now, really trying all sorts of different setups with Eternal Flame, with Green Monster, with Bloodletter, with Flare, with all sorts of different weapons, and this is what I came up with. Slamming, grenades, guns, this does it all. It will even do one-shots. I have one-shotted the strongest boss in the game, True Hag of Fervor, and it still wasn't that difficult. So I increased Captain Trot's health all the way up to 50 billion and one-shotted him too. This build is truly unstoppable, and I promise if you follow this guide, you will have fun with Witch Doctor Moze. So getting right into how the build actually works, what you end up doing is applying a dot with your gun, you apply a dot with your grenade, you apply a dot with your spark plug, and then all of those different things contribute to a very large groundbreaker, which you then drop in the middle of the group of enemies that you're fighting, and you will explode them all. The Radsplosion that you will get out of this should clear out anybody nearby that isn't immediately annihilated by the massive groundbreaker you've just created. And the stronger the dot from your guns is, the faster this loop happens. You can actually take weapons like the Storm and simply shoot it at an enemy once and groundbreaker them to death. It's that fast. The different elements that we are adding with Big Surplus, with Skagden, with Urad, with Sparkplug, with the gun itself, we are adding all these different element dots with the Mana Well bonus damage, with the hexes. There's all these different elements applying at once to every enemy, guaranteeing that they will be dotted almost instantly with multiple elements contributing to your groundbreaker. On top of that, if you'll notice, these are all Urad weapons. Everything here except for a Guardian Angel I have over here, but we'll get to that. Most of these are Urad weapons, which means everything will be irradiated and everything will be putting out radiation auras. Those auras will also get the Urad damage and Big Surplus and Mana Well. That will contribute even further towards your groundbreaker, even further towards these Radsplosions being huge because everything will be irradiated. Every time you get a kill and you set off this explosion, everybody around you dies. That is how Moze turns Dot into her own thing, because everybody knows Moze loves explosions. And since Moze doesn't actually have any space magic of her own, we are again going to be relying on some magical items to do that. Namely the Mana Well, the Hex, the Spark Plug, and somewhat the Bloodletter if you want to consider its little blood sacrifice theme magic. But mostly the grenades and the guns. That's where a lot of the damage over time is going to be coming from. I have talked about cryo grenades on my channel before. They are very funny with bonus elements. Cryo grenades will apply massive dots. You take that cryo efficiency you see on the screen, and that is the multiplier that applies to the card damage, applying a dot over 100,000 from the actual grenades themselves, not the beams. The beams dot is weaker. The grenade explosion is bigger. However, the beams is strong enough to keep the Radsplosion chains going. So those bonus elements can be anything. It doesn't actually matter what the percentage is. It could be 1% fire damage. You will now create that 100-some thousand damage fire dot, meaning Skagden does it, Surplus does it, the Mana Well bonus shock damage does it, the Urad bonus damage does it. All of these things can apply dots from these grenades, and they are all different sources of dots, so they stack with your gun dots. See where this is going? So you got a whole bunch of different dots of the same elements stacking on top of each other. Taking it a step further, the spark plug will also apply smaller dots. Now, they are not very big compared to the grenade dots, compared to the gun dots that you can apply. However, every little bit helps. The Radsplosions do account for the sum total of radiation dots on the target when calculating the damage that they deal. So every little bit helps, and on top of that, the spark plug encourages you to apply the groundbreaker by its own effect being from a slam. So the spark plug in itself can be a build, but when you are able to mix it in with these other items, it gets very strong, very fast. So again, Manuel, Hex, spark plug, and your gun dots, all of these things together just absolutely nuke the battlefield in a way that isn't typically explored on Moze and doesn't even really need crazy rolls. The build itself mostly relies on the Urad anointment and skill tree. Beyond that, it's all gravy. You just need the items themselves to apply it. The rolls on the Manuel certainly help. They are a bonus. The power charge, the amp rolls, they're helpful, but they're not needed to do this stuff. This is all mechanics all the way down. Even this area of effect roll you see on my spark plug, I put that there for the radius. I don't actually need the damage. The radius is the biggest benefit for the Radsplosions spreading across the battlefield. This is a very fun build. I cannot stress that enough, that this does not fall into the typical shoot an enemy until it dies with short fuse. You can choose which weapon is best for the situation. Certain enemies will like the storm, or the certain enemies will laugh at the storm. You can pull a soul render out in denser areas and let the skulls do their thing. The soul render has one of the highest dots in the game, by the way, as far as non-launchers are concerned. Now, you may be looking at me like I'm crazy, but remember, the skulls are 8 times card damage. That also goes for the dot on the skulls. Now, you can't actually see a damage over time value on the soul render because it's cryo. However, it's Urad. Urad will use that cryo efficiency value for the skulls. So the skull is 8 times card damage and the cryo efficiency is 110% of that. That means the soul render skull dots, that's a tongue twister, are 880% of the card value. This thing makes Radsplosions like nobody's fucking business, and I encourage you to try it. Don't spec for short fuse. Let the Radsplosions do the work. The Fearmonger. I don't know why this doesn't get used. This is such a good weapon. It fucks so hard, and as you can see, this is a terror build. You will have melee terror on it, which will be set off by your slugs and your slams. The Fearmonger gets its extra projectiles, meaning it fucks even harder. So then, before we start talking about the Guardian Angel shenanigans and some of the higher end damage methods for this build, just to continue on with some of these weapons over here, the recursion. The recursion is a lot of fun. It's a Mara simulator. The gun, it is a bit involved to use it. You do have to use your brain to use this gun. It carries overkill. The projectile on its own is not very powerful. However, the dots it applies are, and it will apply them to everybody. So what you end up doing is targeting the weaker enemies, having the projectile bounce off of that weak enemy, apply a radiation dot to him with Urad, hit a stronger enemy, apply a radiation dot to him. Now both of them are creating rad auras that damage the other, and the projectile bounces between the two. Now, shortly after that, the weaker enemy will Radsplode, taking out everybody around them. Anybody that recursion projectile came near and applied a damage over time will Radsplode with the first enemy. Again, the recursion takes a little bit of brain power, but once you get it down and how it's used, the gun is absolutely incredible. Storm. I know I mentioned Storm earlier, but that's a Urad Storm. This is one of the few weapons I would definitely say run with Elecrit Anointment. It's fun because the orbs can set off the anointment, so you can kind of bypass the internal cooldown issues that you run into with Elecrit. Beacon is just a good all-around weapon. This one has kill stack on it. Urad kill stack, whatever. I have it in here for experimentation. It's a strong dot pistol, nothing more. Free Radical would also be good, but Free Radical is kind of overshadowed on this setup by the Plasma Coil. That is the only time you will ever hear that. Eruption for debuffing. This is for raid bossing stuff. You won't really need it otherwise, but for Hag, for any modded bosses, pull this out. You can actually see an example of me using this in a controller-friendly way on my Sentry Bear video and my raid boss Tronk kill with this build. Moonfire is fun. It's like gambling with dots. Clairvoyance is just decent. I wouldn't call it a go-to pick, but I love the gun, and it does work for the setup. The 88% cryo efficiency could definitely be better. But it's a high damage single projectile weapon that plays very nicely with overkill, so you can do a good chunk of damage with the initial projectile and then apply a solid radiation dot. OPQ is funny. Enormous dot potential because the shock explosion is a double dip, and it also has a dot value of 100%. So whatever the base damage of that shock explosion is, that is what the value of the dot it can apply is. Since it's a double dip, that value can change. The problem is with double dip dots, as you will often see on Zane builds, you often end up killing the target because you're optimizing for the double dip, nullifying the value of the dot. But it's here, it exists, it is a mechanic that is in the game. You won't get much use out of it other than nuking yourself and the enemies around it, but it's a fun weapon regardless. Flare. Flare is specifically for raid bossing. I have two very similar comms because I was experimenting with min-max setups for raid boss Trant. It can get a bit stronger, but I was pushing the upper limits of what the dot can do simply because of time limits on the dot. Version 0.m also for raid boss Trant and True Hag of Fervor. Get the amp damage rather than going for the bonus damage from Mana Well, which would just give you a little bit of extra damage on your gunshot since you can't apply multiple dots at once. You buff up the dot damage of the single shot and you pray that you apply it. Remember the melt chance passive here? Yeah, I don't need damage, I need application chance. Light speed. Cryo light speed applies a fat fucking dot. I prefer Hex because it's Bloodletter and it's better for healing, but the numbers do not lie. It is chunky. It's piss for raid bossing. The Guardian Angel. This one is anointed with the Urad anointment. That is for use with your spark plugs in the densest of dense mobbing areas in the game, such as the crystals section of True Guardian Takedown. You can drop a spark plug, and then when you go to slam a second time, the groundbreaker you built up just from that single spark plug will more than likely annihilate everything around you. If it doesn't, simply slam again. It will at that point. Again, it's the same loop that I described earlier, just juiced by the Guardian Angel itself. It's included in the build because it's just that strong. It is extremely good at clearing the denser areas in the game. However, it does get a bit boring, so of course you gotta mix it up with guns, with grenades, with other forms of damage. The other Guardian Angel that I did mention earlier is one with the Kill Stack anointment on it. And the reason for that is because the Kill Stack anointment is the only one in the game that actually transfers over to a new weapon that doesn't have that same anointment on it. The stacks are based off of a timer, not the gun itself. So as long as that timer is still going, you get the increased gun damage. Gun damage is an on-shot mole for your weapons, meaning it increases the dot damage they apply. So again, you build up the 10 stacks, you get the 125% scale weapon damage, and then you swap to the next weapon that has a different anointment, and you maintain that weapon damage bonus, further increasing your dot on that next weapon, specifically rocket launchers. The kick charger is my favorite. I like to run this little combination, a kill stat Guardian Angel and a consecutive hits kick charger. That's 225% gun damage for this weapon. That's a fair bit. That gets you a big chunk of dot. On top of it, this weapon also has a charge molt. Charge molt is another on-shot molt, just like gun damage, meaning also increases the dot. Another on-shot molt is amp damage. Amp will increase the dot further. And then finally, kick charger is great for building up overkill because of the charge molt. So you get that 400% overkill, you get that 400% charge molt, you get the amp damage, you get that 225% gun damage. These are all on-shot molts, meaning they all increase the dot damage you deal. So all said and done, you hit whatever is unfortunate enough to receive this shot. And if you apply a dot with this weapon, it will be in the range of, 300-400 million per tick. That's 1 billion damage per second. That's a lot. Nothing survives that. There's absolutely nothing in the game that stands up to that when you do this rotation, hit them with the kick charger, and then pull back out the Guardian Angel to let the dots tick. I have watched Anathema's bars just obliterate from not the gunshot. I have one shot at True Hag of Fervor. Again, like I said, 50 billion health Tron. This little setup, this little DPS rotation is not only fun, but it is wildly powerful. And it can be applied to anything, realistically, if you wanted to, but you don't even have to, because the dot damage is just so high, and it doesn't matter. I mean, this is what you need to do for raid bosses, this rotation I've described, but realistically, for anything less than a raid boss, you can just shoot them. This build has plenty of gun damage. There's damage to be had. Amp on the Mana Well, the bonus damage on the Mana Well, you can get different anointments if you really wanted to. I mean, the damage is there. So, not only is the build a ton of fun, but it's incredibly capable. And it does it in a very roundabout kind of way that you wouldn't normally expect. But with that, we're going to take this Bloodletter off, and we will go over the skill tree to this unbelievably fun build. Oh god, does this build fuck so hard. I hope somebody out there has fun with it, because I sure as hell do. Getting right into Green Tree, Cloud of Lead. More shots is more better. And these skills are not doing anything for us. So moving on, Stoke the Embers. Increase all fire damage you do. Cloud of Lead, Skagden, Surplus, and the fire dots you apply. That counts as fire damage. Redistribution is just kind of here. Scrappy is just kind of here. If I could get Scrappy up to 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5, I would, but I just could not spare the points. So these two are just kind of whatever. The swap speed is what I would really want from Scrappy. The gun damage is not enough to be impactful. But the main point of Green Tree is Russian Offensive, as with most Bloodletter builds. This is the cornerstone of the mechanic. This is Lifesteal. It heals your health bar normally with a Bloodletter class mod on. It heals your shield. That is pretty standard stuff. So moving on to Orange Tree. This is over-spec'd for what you will normally see from me. As I said, I want on-shot mults. And there's a whole bunch of gun damage to be had here. Gun damage, gun damage, gun damage, gun damage, gun damage. All these. That's all on-shot stuff that helps me buff my dots. TRL for shield capacity, because the Mana Well's base capacity is only 37,000. This contributes to the base capacity, which is then doubled by the Deathless I have on. Desperate Measures, since I have a Deathless on, I'm down to 1 health. This will actually get the full gun damage bonus. Phalanx for shield capacity and for gun damage. Tenacious Defense is padding for the Mana Well drain, because occasionally you will not be able to sustain your Bloodletter for whatever reason, if everybody's dead or you're incapable of sprinting at that point in time. Tenacious Defense will apply a padding. So when the Mana Well's 8% per second drain kills your shield capacity, this puts you back to 40%. Gives you a little bit of breathing room to get your shield back up to full, at which point it will reset. On top of that, you will typically have the gun damage bonus up because of the Mana Well's drain being active pretty often. And since the loop involves slamming, this isn't something you even need to actually think about. This just happens. So you will keep yourself alive. You will get that 30% gun damage buff just by playing the game. Blue Tree, the action skill here. D35s, we're killing Cub for big surplus. He has nothing to help us with. I don't have the points to contribute to him to make him worth a damn. His dots aren't worth a damn here. There's really nothing he can do other than give us big surplus, which will in turn help us apply fire dots if Skagden fails to on that one specific instance. Skagden dots and surplus dots are the same thing. They are not separate sources, so they will not stack, but it's just extra application instances. It's also extra damage on your Radsplosions and your Splug, and just big surplus is just there. It's helpful. But Torque Cross Promotion is the star of the show here. Torque Cross Promotion being the radius buff that helps you spread Radsplosions everywhere. If you're ever having issues seeing, just remember, TCP doesn't need eyes. It doesn't care. It sees for you. Always take this skill. Always. It's too good to pass up. The radius buff is so powerful. It will down you occasionally. Deal with it. Skagden, very strong. Means of Destruction, 2 out of 3 because I didn't have the points for it. It was between 4 out of 5 TCP or 2 out of 3 MOD. Yeah, TCP. So just a note, you can't spam hexes like most builds. You do have to mildly control your grenades, meaning, I don't know, throw it every 4 or 5 seconds instead of every second. Just don't throw constantly, you'll be fine. Purple tree. Superior firepower. Again, the cornerstone of any dot build. Doubles all dot damage and all cryo damage that Moze does. Other than that, big surplus is here. Explain that. Big surplus is big damage. Harmonious Havoc for a bit of gun damage on shot. It's okay. I mean, building for all one element isn't going to help you here, but it's just kind of there. We need to move down the tree. All the extra points you see here are mostly moving for down the tree. That is how good this skill is in this build. So it's big surplus, superior firepower, a little bit of Harmonious Havoc, and a little bit of Fired Up. This is, to be honest, a waste. This is a waste. This is a waste, but we need to move down here, and cooldown is actually anti-synergistic. We don't want cooldown here, so they get put here. But that is the skill tree. Guardian rank, standard stuff with big surplus builds. You want topped off, turned off. You also need Groundbreaker and Come On and Slam. They are necessities for this build. Again, this is not a beginner build. I'm assuming you will have these builds if you are looking to have these Guardian ranks if you are looking into doing this build, because you need them. Without Come On and Slam, Splug is a shadow of what it is actually capable of. And that is Witch Doctor Moze, my take on an off-meta setup that will put a smile on your face, that will go off the charts as far as the giggle factor is concerned. It will melt anything in this game. It will speed through Maliwan takedown. It will fly through True Guardian takedown. It will make absolute mincemeat of the hardest content this game has on offer, and it will keep a smile on your face the entire way through. I hope that somebody else gets to enjoy this build just as much as I did, that somebody else gets to embody their inner siren while playing Moze, that somebody else gets to remind the world that anything can be made into an explosion if you try hard enough. If you are looking for a save file, if you are looking to pick my brain about something you saw in this video, or if you have questions about a general Moze setup and need some assistance, if you're just looking for a social space, if you have really cute pets that you want to show off, there's a link to my Discord in the description to this video. Come on down, it is open for anybody. I have some of the smartest people in the community hanging out, bullshitting, sending out funny memes, and doing their thing. You are welcome to come by. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.